And we also have online a number of people. And I know that we have people from not just multiple countries, but also multiple continents. So good morning to some of you and good afternoon to the others. Welcome to our product design meetup that we're hosting today in Sarajevo. I would first of all like to really thank our speakers and panelists who have joined us today. Some flew in from San Francisco. Peter, thank you so much for joining us all the way. It's quite a trip. And some have joined us from many interesting companies here from Sarajevo, and I'm really excited about the discussion we'll have today. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I did want to take this opportunity to just to tell you a few words about HTech and what we're trying to do here today and why we believe that these types of gatherings and this topic is particularly important. So if you don't know, HTech was established in 2008 as a startup in the incubator of the technical faculties of the University of Belgrade. Today, it's quite a different story. We're a large company that's operating in 11 different countries with a team of more than 2,200 experts. But why this topic is particularly important is because from the beginning, the way of working and the culture of HTech was set up against the importance of understanding what you are engineering. We are an engineering company first historically, but from the very beginning, it was super important to our engineering teams to understand the business value, the value to the end customer, and to be part of the discussions, even to understand how the technical discussions they're having are influencing the final product and what is going to appear on the market or what somebody is going to use one day that they're working on. So we worked really hard, even in our engineering teams, to build very strong domain expertise. For example, we worked on a very large platform in the maritime industry, and we now in-house have a maritime expertise team that can work with multiple clients that understand the problems of the maritime industry and understand different solutions for them. We have a healthcare and life sciences expertise team that's composed of not just engineers, but now even doctors and product managers and many different experts who are together multidisciplinarily working on developing innovative projects in the healthcare and life sciences domain. And that has been the case across the board in every domain we've operated in. Even if we didn't know anything about a domain, when we started working on it, we worked really hard to build this expertise and to understand what we are building. Now, over time, this has grown into a really significant part of our team. So about 3 years ago, we established the Product Innovation Office as an in-house team that's working in the product design space on three primary objectives. The first objective was to make sure that we're implementing best practices in product design across our whole portfolio. So they were working with product managers and product designers that are on projects to make sure that whatever we are doing is in line with global best practices in this area and that we're always implementing the latest methodologies in this space. The second objective they had was to develop people, to develop the competency frameworks for our product managers and product designers, to organize educations and to really develop the team that has now grown to more than 100 people in our company who are in different product design roles. And the third objective that this team had was to support sales and to be part of the discovery and system design phase, the initial phases of projects, and to really help us work with our clients in that early stage on the conceptualization and making sure that whatever we will build in the long term will be most valuable to the client and will be successful in the end. In the meantime, we were also joined by a super incredible team from the Silicon Valley Momentum Design Lab that joined HTech Group almost 2 years ago, Peter, right? It will be 2 years in October. No, 2. Yeah. I think it's 3 years how we started talking about and working in a partnership mode, and it's 2 years since the acquisition happened and Momentum is officially part of our team. And since then, we were joined by a really impactful global team that has been present in the Silicon Valley for more than 25 years, and it's rated #1 on Clutch for their product design services and has a really in-depth knowledge of both the US and the UK market and teams that are present in these two geographies. So like I said, HTech now is a team of 2,200 experts. That's not just engineers, it's product designers, product managers. Like I said, we have a number of doctors that are working with us. Now we have a number of automotive experts that are working with us on expanding that area in the company. And we're really trying to work with the best talent in primarily the Southeast Europe region and to work with the best companies in the world in the US, UK markets, Nordics, and other parts of the world. Now, our clients nowadays can be grouped probably into three main categories. One are large tech corporations, and we're working with some of the Fortune 5 or Fortune 10 companies in the world and some of the best tech companies. And what is amazing about our collaboration with these companies is that we are able to work on their core revenue generating new products that they're building. And this has really been an inspiration for our teams in a way that we've built many exciting new things and built our people through working with some of these best companies in the world. The second group of clients that we have are exciting scale-ups and startups also from these markets. And there the model of collaboration is different. It's equally exciting in a way because in some accounts we are able to own the full product. So there have been cases where from start to finish, the HTech team has owned the product development from the initial conceptualization, the idea, to bringing that product to the market. And this has also been a really interesting way of working and how we've built this product design expertise over time. And the third group of clients that we have are companies in traditional industries that are not necessarily technology companies, but that they know they need to go through a digitalization process to transform their way of working. And we have been there with a number of these companies to guide them through this digital transformation and through this process, work with their management to understand what are the latest technologies that can positively impact, optimize their business in a way, and bring great results to this business to their business. So we're very proud now to be spanning pretty much every technology and every domain that you can imagine, and working with some of the most talented people in this part of the world. I think that's enough of an introduction on HTech. We have a super exciting discussion today. Especially want to thank our panelists who joined us and everybody who's with us both online and in Sarajevo. And I really hope we get the opportunity to talk about these topics more often. And if you have any suggestions for us on what topics you would like to hear more of in the future, what other types of events you would like us to organize, please let us know. And for those of you who are live in Sarajevo, we have a little surprise at the end. There will be some awards. So if you haven't put your name in our box that was at the entry, you can do that now, and we'll pick a few winners at the end, and there's some great prizes involved. Just raise your hand if you haven't put your name in. Peter, you're disqualified. Okay. I'll think about that and let you know. We do have special prizes for the speakers. Don't worry about that. Okay, everybody, let's get started. The first part of the event will be a great presentation from Peter, and then we'll follow that with a discussion with our panel. So Peter, please kick it off.
Well, thank you. Well, hello. We got the mic going on. All right. Well, today is the exciting world about design. We're going to be talking about design. So design-led methodologies, but the topic obviously is the next level. So basically the conversation is all about how the methodology, how is the process, as well as the expectations of a modern day product designer, to give you this visibility of the skill sets required to actually do this method, as well as the expectations of what you might want to learn or get exposed to in your career path. So I flew in on Friday. I love the film festivals. I've been enjoying Sarajevo for the last couple of days, so it's been amazing. So I got multiple things here, so I'm going to do this, and let's see if it works. There we go. All right, so first things first, design has been a very powerful tool of moving business forward. So it's been ongoing, gaining momentum in the last few years about different ways that we can solve problems for our customers. Within the 2023 digital landscape, it's very critical. Human-centered design is very critical for business to think about. It's very important for gaining the recognition, trust, loyalty, of building the brand recognition for their audiences. So this is a mechanism to actually figure out, because people expect personalization. They expect optimized experiences, seamless, frictionless. Get on your phone, or any little hiccup is a channel for a pain point for within the customer experience. First impressions are all design related. So think about any new thing you get turned on to. You go and check it out online or whatever channel. If that first initial moment is wrong, you're not going to come back. So this is all about how do we achieve and how do we optimize the design or the experience to achieve that seamless experience. So today's topic, I'm going to unravel the essence of design-led methods, as well as the modern expectations of a product designer, as I mentioned. We're going to be talking about design-led collective impact of CX, business design, service design, as well as product design, and then how technology gets weaved into the mix. Obviously, the main goal is to create that seamless experience, then delight customers at the end of the day. It's all about the moments of delight. Is how I frame the design process. So I'm going to start with some fun. So I would like to have a little bit boisterous here. You guys are a little, so why don't we start with some fun? So everybody has encountered those moments with any sort of product or service that are good and bad. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of bad and then good. But it's all referencing into what we're going to be talking about, which is the customer experience, service design, business design, etc. So the first one, I think everybody's had this issue. How many times does it take to actually plug in a USB port? I mean, every time, doesn't matter. You've done it numerous times, but you always have that moment of pause before you actually plug it in. So that's an example of bad. The next one is business design. So, questionable business design decisions, abruptly just changing branding and losing that valuable brand equity. So as well as just you're probably experiencing, if you're on this platform right now, it's very disjointed. They're branding all in one logo elsewhere. Everything was it an X? Is it a tweet? I don't know. So there's a lot of questions with that choice. This one is near and dear to me. This is part of my travels. Obviously, I had to catch a lot of different transfer planes, different flight connections. So, if you ever had to do this, just imagine that experience of the unknown. Is my plane going to arrive on time? Do I have enough time to actually run down to actually catch my connecting flight? So this is a good example of the end-to-end touch points. Just to think about how many different ways you collect information to try to navigate to your gate. So this is me rushing in London in this one, but I also did it on the way here as well. So we're going to switch to good. So good. So iPhone. I mean, it is something. It's basically the ideal state of aesthetics. Usability, the ecosystem of all the different great functions and features that are available on this. Obviously, from phone to everything else, it's a lifeline. The next one is service design. So Airbnb, I'm not quite sure if they're in Europe all that extensively, but it's an organization that truly believes in customer experience. They're very focused on every touch point along from booking, finding a location, customer service, when you check in, every point of the way they do a great job of connecting the dots, as well as just empowering the brand loyalty within that experience. Another one is Disney. So the Disney experience in park, as well as the other digital communities that they have, they just do it right. They are at the cutting edge of just technology, embracing new technologies through their Fast Pass, as well as the AR treatments in park, really to just immerse yourself in everything Disney. They just are very, very conscious of that, just setting the storyline, and you are experiencing it all the way through. All right, so let's get on topic around what is design methodology. So design methodology is, whoops, one more. The big difference is it's not what you make, it's why you make it. So the why, that's where you have to think on, focus on. So the design-led approach. So the design-led approach is all about understanding and putting the customer at the pinnacle point. So where every decision that you make through from this point forward, you think about the customer. So that is every discipline. That's designers, engineers, whoever is involved, stakeholders. That is the main premise. So when we first start, every product that we start with, starts with asking a series of questions of why statements, right? So why are we doing this in the business? What is the business purpose? What is the technology? How does that play a role? Is it on, multiple channels? Is it on mobile? Is it on else? What are those? What are the emerging technologies available to actually solve the need? Then obviously people, that's really big. So understanding their needs, who the audience is, what roles they play, as well as any other information that really solve whatever problem at hand that we have to solve for. Then after you kind of do that lens, it's basically an iteration. So you basically do iteration cycles really to really mix in some design thinking exercises. And that really helps answer all the whys, as well as you keep asking why throughout the process. And that's how innovation happens. It's that iterative cycle of asking the questions why. All right, so I'm going to go through kind of the areas of design. So customer experience, we kind of talked about it. What is customer experience, or CX? It is every touch point along a customer journey. So that is from the initial awareness to actually participating with that product or service. And then if you need support along the way, what does that experience look like? And then at the end of the day, it's really building, we want to build advocates, customer loyalty. So it's consciously mapping every touch point along the way. So online interactions, customer service, product design, marketing campaigns, and more, events. It all goes into this bucket called CX. For modern businesses, this cannot be overstated. This is very important for brands to be successful. Stitching it all together and seamlessly delivering the quality that they want to give their customers. So business design. So business design is thinking about, looking at the full business model. And we look at many different areas within this. It really breaks down to two different types of subtasks. We identify the business model, along with the customer journey. Business strategy. So that is where you go in and actually do the competitive analysis, do the deep dive, market trend research, user insights. So, look at those and basically develop a plan or strategy that really aligns to the corresponding business need as well as the user need. And that is a piece. The business design is really taking those insights and really collaborating with the client and internal team members to really come up with actionable outcomes or strategies. Some of the activities are kind of, they're business thinkers, analysts, strategists. These are all the product designers' responsibilities when they go through this. So it's definitely a hybrid approach of skill sets that actually go into this step. All right, service design. So this is where we dig deep and understand the actual user, as well as all the little multiple touch points along the journey. So it's all about optimizing, identifying. It's also identifies moments of delight. I mentioned that earlier. So it's pain points. I think journey mapping is like one of the main activities you do in this exercise. And you identify pain points, you try to solve those, look for opportunities, and then you go into identifying what's good. But it's the holistic ideal state. That is the goal of this stage of work, is really thinking about what is the optimal experience that we should do. Some of the frameworks that we use, it's obviously it's cross-disciplinary. So it's not just designers thinking through it. This is really optimizing the journey. We understand the users through personas. The other frameworks that we use are job to be done. If you want to do really outcome based, that is the trend these days, is really thinking that way of the end output, in addition to who you're designing for. It could be interaction design, and then just process design. It kind of goes the gamut, depends on the problem that you have to solve. So aligning to customer expectations is the end goal. So product design. So product design is the journey of, bringing them all together. Whoops, am I on one too much? Thank you. There we go, elevating product design. So I looked at the list before this meeting, and I saw there's a bunch of product designers. So yes, it's obviously taking point A to point B, but taking all the research that you identified in the previous steps, and really solutioning. Thinking about the right experience that you want to create. But there's a lot of exploring, a lot of ideation, a lot of developing, and refining and refining and refining. So what is the role of a product designer? You are envisioning the ideal state. I mean, this is what our clients are looking for. They want to push the envelope. So this is the opportunity to really connect and solve for the business as well as the user. It breaks down to, a couple different subgroups, UX and UI. Are also considered part of the product design, but product design is holistic, and then the other items are just part of the process that you have to go through. All right. So come on now. So technical strategy. So this is a very critical for design-led. This is the true collaboration of understanding how do we make this seamless experience. And this is part of the journey of understanding, what is the ideal technology, reviewing the portfolio of emerging technology that might be available or should we explore. The focus in this sense, using how technical strategy differs in design-led, is all about emphasizing the end-to-end approach. So it's not at the feature level, it's at from the initial awareness all the way through being an advocate for the user. So everything needs to be interconnected. And then it goes into the overarching strategy. So at the end of the day, it's the cohesive vision is what we're trying to establish. And this is everyone involved on the initiative. So this is designers, internal teams, stakeholders. Is really going through the process and aligning on what is the ideal state that we want to create. And this is methodology. It lends itself to having that alignment just baked right in. So there's no confusion, and you're just kind of iterate. So here's an example of a design-led approach process flow. It breaks down discovery, ideation, creation, and then design and realize. It's fully integrated with the different responsibilities within design as well as technology. So obviously, we kind of went through the first stage in the CX, understanding the problem, asking the right questions of the why. And once we actually kind of define that, we develop, user stories. Once the user stories kind of go through and kind of set the precedent of a direction, here at Momentum, we go through a lot of workshopping. So we do a lot of workshopping, multiple days, and we really work with our stakeholders and really co-create together to come up with a plan to move forward into the iteration and creation stage, which is brainstorming, use case development, all the great stuff around storytelling, understanding, visualizing, prototyping. But also it's the time to talk about those emerging technologies, really having that piece in the conversation as well. Once we go through that, we go into, we deliver an experience brief, or it's kind of our strategy document, understanding of all the thinking that we have created up to that point. So that is all the information we know about the user, all of the great synergies and the strategies that we identified for the business as well as the overarching experience. Typically, we create some sort of visualization. They can be mock-ups or they can be prototypes or even high fidelity videos. It really depends on really setting the stage and how do we want to communicate with our customer. Once we establish that, that's kind of the milestone to say, okay, once we have a strategy, we go into design. In this diagram, it's closely paired design and product engineering. It's really the same thing. It's really at the same time we need to be thinking about the same solutions at the end of the day. But there's a typical refinement of the journey. As you know, product cycles, iterations, sprints, all of that happens here. And then we go into formalization, and then we go into development stories. So that is the process of the design-led approach. But I'll go back to the main process, the main goal of the design-led. Through all of these stages, we're thinking about one thing. Are we designing the right experience for the user all the way through? And that is then at the end, it's always measuring success, but then it's cycles. So there's many cycles that I haven't put up on this chart, but they happen continuously throughout the process. All right, so let's talk about, breathing some life into product design. This is really, basically, if you want to create a culture of design-led thinking in your group, what should that be? So we're talking about, I created some guiding principles that are critical for being successful. So obviously empathy for your customer, that's number one. Fostering innovation, so very iterative, outcome-driven based thinking involved. Making decisions based on data. So we've, through the process, we've collected all those great insights. We need to harness those, leverage those, and those are our barometer of success throughout the process. Then collaboration. So it is it's a cross-disciplinary. You need to have different points of view to solve the right problems. So having that space, having that process, and having those cycles of iteration is very critical for success. All right. So what does a modern product designer look like today? How many product designers do we have in the room? Raise your hands. So about half in the room are product designers. Okay. So I call my designers unicorns. I expect a lot of my product designers. Their full stack capability. I expect them to do their own research all the way through to actually handoff of design. So that is the tagline that I kind of call out is, be human, be real, be scrappy, be bold. And those are all above is what I expect the designers to really be comfortable doing. So the profile. So some attributes. So craftsmanship, know the craft. So that's everything you do through research, through actual UX, through UI, is really becoming an expert of craftsmanship. Empathy. We've been talking about that a lot. Understand the user needs, putting them first when you're thinking. Collaboration. Again, that's another standard theme throughout this presentation, but co-creation is key. Communication is key. Yeah, everyone works differently, different time zones. So I have teams that are in multiple time zones. I work across every time zone. So it is critical to have the right conversations at the right time so you can move things along and be successful. Curiosity, I call this passion. Passion for design or passion for solving problems. That is critical for a modern product designer. Just be hungry to learn as well. So our space is always evolving with the different tools that are coming out, and seems like every day now, new tools to learn and explore, and definitely figure out how you can leverage them and how you can harness them. The profile. So a lot of these should be kind of common sense, but let's kind of go through them, right? So the first one's around human need, and emotions. That's something you have to consider as well. Put yourself in your end user or your end customer's mindset, and think about what are the interaction models that you need to guide them through. What kind of support do they need along the way? Mapping out the entire customer journey. We talked about that, identifying where are those moments to light, where are those pain points that I have to solve. And then UX and UI are the items that kind of stitch them all together. Teams, yeah, I mentioned a couple times of collaboration of different stakeholders. So product designers are the chameleons. One day they have to talk to stakeholders, do the interviews, understand their mindset. And then the other half is working with their team members. That's a whole other designer mindset. And then the collaboration between engineers, that's a whole other mindset. So there's a lot going on that mental context shifting is key. And then so at Momentum, we like to keep our designers focused, but that might not be always the case. So it is a skill to learn if you are in multiple engagements to really kind of do the time blocking and mental blocking of what you need to solve throughout the day. Shifting context is really big. And then we talk about balancing the user needs and the business needs, and then the technical constraints. There's never any technical constraints. Blue sky always. No. So yes, you have to come down and actually iterate to get to the ideal state. But defining the clear vision is the main responsibility in this function. So, and then just having the craftsmanship to understand how best to prototype. So this is an area of the tools have definitely changed in the last 3 months. I mean, there's opportunity to really, really tell very immersive, very exciting stories through to kind of showcase your design thinking through prototyping. Momentum, we prototype everything. So that is our main presentation to our stakeholders, is through micro interactions all the way through like high fidelity prototyping. Another thing is always thinking, keeping up with trends. As a designer, I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and a lot of my designers ask, how do I learn? How do I keep up with trends? Well, you have to read. Read, it's a daily ritual. Every morning I go through my sources and just kind of keep up to date. Early on in my career, I was told the same thing, is no one likes doing it, but just do it. And then it makes you a better designer. It gives you a little bit more perspective when you're actually coming to a problem and you see you have something to reference or go back to, some sort of like a fragment of thought. You're like, oh yeah, I saw that somewhere. Let me maybe revisit that, maybe expand upon it. Communication. That's another huge one of just learning how to communicate. So I mentioned time zone. So the modern tools of, Slack, Zoom, Teams, Figma is the big one that my team is the current team is using. So they love to communicate, and I'm sure you guys are doing the comments left and right today, even within that platform. We're even open and transparent with our clients. We give them access to actually work in progress. So we do our review cycles, and they seem to appreciate actually being able to jump there and do comments. Selfishly, I like it because it's all in one spot. So it's actually, that was, it's very nice in that regard. Blending high level vision. So I call this business sense. So we talked about business design, but as a modern product designer, you're expected to really understand the big picture, but then you zoom down into the granular micro interaction as well. So learning how to pivot when appropriate, and then depending on the audience who you need to communicate with, you just have the right story. So storytelling in that sense is something definitely it's a value of the modern day product designer. Passion. The last one I wrote it down as value ownership. It's really passion. Oops. Yes, passion. So this is the expectation is that you have to own it. You're designing, you're working on it. It might not be the most flashy thing on that particular project, but the next one will be. So definitely having that, build up your repertoire of craft, leveraging all the feedback, all of the insights that you can get, no matter what the source, and then really building out the right empathy for who you're designing for, as well as solving for the business needs. And that is my end of my presentation. So We are going to go to Q&A, and I'll open it up for some questions. So this group looks like they're going to ask a lot of questions, people online, so we'll see. Anything new, anything surprising on what I shared? All right, we got one.
I'll just skip the introducing myself part.
Oh yeah, right to the question.
Product designer. That's fair enough. I love your approach of having your designers aspire towards a full stack kind of thing, like a horizontal and T line, all of it. A little bit of this, a little bit of that for better understanding. I would like to know, how do you see the latest of the trends, which is artificial intelligence and its integration into this job description of product designers today? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean that is the current trend, right? I mentioned there's every day it seems like a new tool. We've been fortunate enough, we've been embracing them for early adopters. So we use it in every step of the journey that I put up there on the design on the map. Is we have a process and we are using the tools today. So you have to. I challenge my team is embrace or die. In reality, I mean, it's figuring out the right ways to leverage them. An example is after you do user research, understanding the needs of the user, synthesizing the data. Generative AI is great for that. We do a hybrid jobs to be done methodology using those tools as well to generate the outcomes really quickly and getting something to iterate on. That is one use case for generative. We're also doing it on the design side. So Midjourney and a few other tools that are relevant. I'm finding it's not a day-to-day tool. So the designers, we have a library of approved tools that we identified. We went through all of them. I think our list right now internally was over 200 tools that we evaluated, and we boiled it down to, I don't know, about probably maybe a dozen or so that we leverage when we need be. But yeah, it's been rapid pace, really to formalize and kind of think about it. And we're still exploring. We are in the total experimental stage of understanding what works, what's the benefit. Everyone's used the current generative tools, and sometimes you get some funny results. So yeah, it's human driven, human reviewed is critical. So it's really a tool. It's not going to I just think if it's another tool, it's really just something to do optimize your workflow, help the process along, as well as some of the advances of late. It's going to be pretty interesting of giving more recommendations. Some of the image-based stuff is still garbage in my opinion, but they're getting better every day. But yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Mm-hmm.
I thank you for the presentation. Wonderful information as well. Success of the product from the user perspective.
There's many different KPIs that are generated at the project level. Typically, every organization looks at success differently. So during our discovery, we, as a collective team, we go through and identify what is important for that particular service or product. It's bespoke for the most part. So there's typical, there is, I call them CX rating or scorecards that are used. There's kind of a hybrid between the traditional NPS all the way through to time on site, all of that kind of mixed together of different indicators. If it's a true CX experience that is being architected, I mean, there's probably more than a handful of different ways to actually track it. So there's not a one answer to answer that question.
Thank you. Also, one question as well. Regarding the product and iterative cycles, how do you integrate user feedback on future iterations of the product?
Oh, that's a great question. So I didn't really get there in the diagram that I shared, but we do circle, so we do validation all the way through. So we love feedback early and often. We have multiple different stages throughout the discovery as well as the design, and then beyond. It depends on the organization of what their cadence of their testing loops are. But before anything is launched, we definitely do testing associated to, is it viable? And then we build out a testing plan typically to do the right work or the right iterations, fast follows all the way to backlog items.
And thank you. That's all.
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm Nazir, product designer. I'm very much interested in the discovery phase. How you approach it? Is there like a set structure you follow of one of these established methodologies? And who's usually there from the team? Do you involve like all of your product designers and from the business side, of course, the client side?
Yeah. So the way that we typically operate is at the initiative level. The team sizes can range depending how big the problem is. But it just an average is probably 2 product designers. I structure the momentum group as a first chair, second chair kind of relationship. So there's a principal designer and then a second chair. It could be another senior or it could be a junior level depending on the problem. I do that for mentoring as well as learning opportunities. Outside of that design team, there's other disciplines. Momentum, we have a role called, it's a hybrid role called a DL, a delivery lead, which is a product project. Depending on the individual, they have wild card skills, I call them. They might be a business analyst, they might be a designer, they might be a content writer, or BA. It goes really, so we have, those are the 3 core players on every project. And then the stakeholder on their side, we normally have them identify at least 4 people associated to the initiative, ideally trying to cover all of the different areas that whatever we're trying to solve is, so that's from leadership, that's from marketing, that is from development, that is from experience or product, depending how they're structured. And that's the core team. So we normally do a kickoff, like everywhere else, really understanding what is the problem we need to solve. Then we start our discovery and we do the preliminary kind of quick scan research, understanding the space, market research that starts. And we try to do all of our user interviews, stakeholder interviews before we start doing workshopping. We do a lot of current state assessments as well in that stage, and then technical assessments go in there as well. And we bring all of those insights to our workshops. So our workshops are typically 2 to 3 days, all day deals. We use design thinking methodologies to facilitate those workshops. And that is where the magic happens, really to get alignment and understanding of what's ahead of us. And then that is kind of where you saw the experience brief stage. Once we kind of go through all those steps, we have a point of view and we have a good strategy actually to design from. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's good seeing everybody finally face to face. Okay. Yeah. So that next is going to be the panel. So I'm going to have Amelia. You want to introduce the panel?
This is working. Peter, for the great presentation and for the introduction. Now I would like to invite our panelists to please join us here at stage. So Jason, Nermin, Rusmir, and Peter, please take your seats. Ready? All right. So we'll start with a brief introduction of our panelists. Peter requires no introduction after the wonderful presentation. Jason Grant, he joins us from UK. He's the CEO of, at Integral, and through his work at Integral, they coach companies to develop innovative design thinking across their entire organization, helping them deliver customer-centric company experience. And Nedmin Chatovic, a director of technology and product at MVP Factory, where he leads the technology and product teams in developing innovative solutions aligned with business goals. Rusmir Arnautovic, as the head of design at Klika, he assumes the vital responsibility of leading and overseeing the design team. With their impressive combined experience of nearly 100 years in this industry and coming from diverse roles, I look forward to hearing their different perspective on design-driven product development. So I'll start with Jason. Jason, I would like to leverage your knowledge in helping organization transition to customer-centric experience. And I have a couple of questions for you. First one is, what role does leadership play in promoting and supporting a design-led mindset throughout the company?
Thank you very much. So first of all, it's an extreme pleasure to be speaking for the first time in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm originally from here, from the town of Banja Luka. And my Bosnian name is Mirza Basic, so I've introduced myself to you as Mirza Basic, but I use Jason Grant in UK, pravim se English. It works really well. That's actually been a very important aspect of my ability to adapt and influence a foreign culture. And I think this is a very important aspect of leadership. If someone goes to China, they're given a Chinese name, even though your name might be Rusmir or Mirza, whatever, because it's culturally polite to use a Chinese name. Similarly, in Western world, they don't necessarily want to hear from Bosnian people in UK, because UK is the only nation in the world called great. Check it out. So they think they're great. And if I come there as Mirza Basic, nobody wants to hear me. I've tried this and I couldn't get a single job. That's why I started my own company and started working for myself from the start. And I quickly adapted to the local culture in order to actually lead my way forward, lead myself forward. And in that way, was able to actually lead companies into that transformation. So I'm not ashamed of my name, but I'm also familiar with the culture there and what actually is easier to work with. So in a company that doesn't recognize design at all, where the leadership is actually kind of hostile towards it, you can be the leader there. It's very hard, but it's possible. I've done it many times. But if the leadership is embracive of design, then what I work towards is to try and make everyone as much of a designer inside the company. In other words, you've seen that I came across and shook all your hands and asked for your names. The reason for that is because you're all designers. And that's what I do when I go with the companies. I actually make everyone my friend because everyone's able to contribute to the design process. And in the Disney, Walt Disney, famously the movie Fantasia with Mickey Mouse, fighting the broom, the idea actually came from the cleaner of Disney company who said, why didn't you make the broom a character, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where the inspiration came from. So everyone's a designer. You need to embrace that idea and empower everyone else in that process.
And I'll continue with the second question for you. After you have a glass of water or no?
No, it's okay. I thought it was going to be this.
The most common challenges organization face while transitioning to a design-led mindset.
So it's very rare that there is a company that has a design-led mindset. I think Airbnb is a good example because the actual founder used to be a UX designer. So one of the interesting things about Airbnb, for example, because I'm booked here into Airbnb flat, just downtown Sarajevo, and they share the Wi-Fi password in your booking. So when you get there, you can just connect, and home is where the Wi-Fi connects automatically. So I feel very at home there now. Brian Chesky knows this, and that's why they kind of made all these little micro touch points baked into the design of Airbnb. in some maybe lesser sense, it's a bit harder to do that with Coinbase, which is another kind of UX designer founded company. And perhaps one of the reasons why Coinbase is still standing out, crypto exchange that hasn't really been so targeted as much as others. What was the question again?
What are the most common challenges the organization face?
Yeah, so the most common challenges is that really almost no company is design-led in true sense, unless the founder is a designer. And you just like, rather than expecting a design-led company, what you are better off is to expect absolute hate towards design, okay? And as you come in there expecting barrage of hatred, and if it doesn't happen, then you're in a bonus straight away mentally. But if it does happen, it's actually something I call defensive design. I'm always prepared for all the negatives. In fact, I encourage people to feed me the negative points at all times, actually, because by removing the negativities, you end up with perfection. And I'm actually striving towards perfection at all times. And I think it's achievable. I think most Apple products are near perfect. There's a lot of near perfect or even perfect products. And what is a perfect product? It's a product that you look at and you use and you go like, I can't immediately think of a way to improve this. Yeah? If you struggle to improve it, it's perfect.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Nermin. You have an ample experience working in both engineering and product and working with various teams. So I'm curious to know how do engineering and design teams collaborate effectively in your experience, and what strategy have you found most successful for this collaboration?
So it's great being here today with everybody and seeing some familiar faces as well. At MVP Factory, we do a lot of corporate venture building and a product development. Now, that means that there are multiple roles involved in the process of actually bringing the companies to a certain level from the ground up, or actually products as well. Now, common roles that we, for example, have are like venture architect, product manager, designer, and a tech lead. And you can see in that kind of a core roles that, for example, teaming up product manager, tech lead, and a product designer are essentially the ones who draft and deliver and think about the product from a user perspective. Now, there are a lot of examples when some things don't work out the way we want it to be, but essentially, in a nutshell, breaking down silos and an effective communication between these different roles is essential for product success or company success anyways. Now, what that means is that often in engineering organizations who are primarily engineering organizations, you can see like transferring the work over the fence to another team. For example, like the designer transfers back to development team, the development team transfers back to the QA team, etc. And there's like a discrepancy between what they do together, and actually they should be focused on a product, on the why, on the problem, and being user-centric towards actually resolving that and building a proper product. So by building some of these kind of ventures, you need to, from the very start, you need to bring them together. So what we often do is actually when the product starts, as Peter was saying before, like we do similar aspects with the design-led and the workshop-based, for example, models in the essential ideation phases. So if you spend 2 days with somebody in a well-prepared workshop, a lot can come out of that. But the goal is not only to actually draft it out in the very beginning and treat that as a strategy. The goal is actually to keep that momentum throughout to the product building phase, and even if the product is alive, in a growing phase as well. So bringing designers into more strategic decisions, bringing developers into strategic decisions, understanding the common problem that they're trying to actually solve with that sort of a product, or actually what the user needs are, is something that effectively resolves this kind of a collaboration. Not resolves collaboration, but actually resolves friction or increases the collaboration between different roles within different teams. If all of them are aligned on this and on the same page on what they need to do and contribute to the common success or a vision, then it's much easier to collaborate and have a really great working environment for any role that there is.
That's a really good point. So though you may have already partially answered this question, can you share an example of successful cross-functional collaboration that led to a remarkable product outcomes?
Yeah, so I think in a previous year or year and a half, we've had like 4 or 5 different corporate ventures being built. And when I talk about corporate ventures, it means like there is a big company, they have an idea, they don't know how to tackle that idea, or they don't have capacities, and they're looking for partners to actually bring that up. Imagine Pfizer wants to go into digital. They have no idea. That's not their core business. They don't have capacities so they partner up with a company such as MVP Factory to help them do that. Then you go through a little through different phases of ideations and actually narrowing down the problem that you want to solve. You might have one idea, but throughout different ideations and validations, you might come up with a different idea, which is actually a targeted niche and an aspect of it. So what we've done recently with the one German company is actually tackled that problem, HR problem space, especially when it comes to vacations. You know, time offs are a big thing in Europe. Basically taking a sabbatical is taking a time off to go somewhere or work from another country to contribute to that. So through a lot of phases of these kind of iterations on the ideation phase, we managed to narrow down the problem space that we're going to try to tackle. And from the very first day, the product designer, venture architect, marketing manager, contributing in the workshops to build the product itself. First the idea, then the product later down the line, which means that you can build a product, but in the next phase, when you actually have a product on the market, when you're trying to test it out, find users, grow the base of it all, basically you need to have them all collaborating together. That HR startup actually is a company now, which is not only a product of, it's a complete spin-off from the initial parent company. It won the HR award for the best HR startup in this year, basically, by the whole team working. And the way we've continued contributing to that success is bringing the designers on the very, I would say, not a bottom, but like on the basic operational levels of development, meaning like the designer signs off the dev work, because no designer wants to say, look, I made it pixel perfect, but the guys didn't do their job in doing it. So we bring it so close to each other, like all these different roles, we bring them close so that they are collectively responsible for the success of the product itself. So that's one of the things, for example, one of the examples that we have. There are numerous other ones where we take into account like user insights, feedback sessions. There was a question, I think, before, like, how do you feed the user's feedback into the product? Imagine being in a beta phase where you launch the product, you launch the company, but you're now trying to align it with actual customer needs even more. So you need to pull that back into the backlogs. You need to give new iterations. You need to do A/B testings with the users, etc. So it's like a continuous effort of all of those different roles that need to contribute to the success of the product building.
That's a really good segue into my next question towards Rusmir. I know we had a question for the audience and Peter answered it, but Rusmir, I'm interested in your perspective on how could you share the challenges you faced when incorporating user feedback and how your team overcame it?
I mean, thank you for inviting me here with the lovely group being here. Depending, I mean, there's a lot of case studies that I can bring up. I always love to bring one case study called bringing nostalgia and innovation together. So basically, we had a client in my former company where I worked for, and there was 2 challenges that I need to be taken down. The one is basically the design challenge, and another one is wrestling with the nostalgia. So what it means. Just to express the challenge in a different ways and try to build a story about. So imagine you have a classical car and the client basically want to bring effectiveness and futuristic things from the future cars in their product, basically. So at the end, the main request was to bring or to leave the whole kind of user habits that the people had using that kind of product. So we had several different stages just to knock it up, and Peter already talked about that. And our first phase was deep dive feedback. So what it means, it was the discovery phase, basically, where we sit as a design team with our stakeholders and the product managers, and also including the engineers, just to see what needs to be done, improved, and also kept from the previous design and from previous functionality of the application. And basically, that was the first challenge. And we, based on all those feedbacks from the stakeholders and from the previous user what I had, we categorize that into several different categories. So like must have, needs to keep, or redundant things. So after that, we basically dived in a world of the world of the prototyping, where we just not have a nudge designs and just switch it. We also make the whole kind of new design just to test it and just to see it. And all things came basically based on the feedback. So after that, we basically asked the next in the line, basically our users, and we call it bringing our MVPs or our users. So it's not just assuming what they wanted, we also included them and through the whole kind of iteration process. So we tested with the in-house groups, with the focus groups and everything. And basically the most important user feedback that we needed to have was from the first users that came and started to use the application, because they are the longest users of that. So after that, basically, we try to go through different phases like design, reiterate, refine, and everything. So as Peter already mentioned, the whole kind of cycles. So the challenge was just to listen to users, what they want, not break their habits. But instead of breaking their habits, we just have tried to find a new way of improving the habits, like keeping the old stuff, but just improve it in a modern way. And at the end, basically of the last phase, we always had the great outcome, like rejuvenated designs that meet all the goals. We kept the nostalgia of the old things. We didn't break the habits, but we improved it. And the users, the old users and the new users were really satisfied at the end. So it's, as a takeaway, it's not breaking the habits, just improve the habits of the user.
Thank you, and making them included in all of the decisions so they contribute throughout the way. Peter, next question is for you. So there was a great question from an audience earlier about generative AI. Are there any other emerging technologies or methodologies that you believe will have a significant impact on the design-driven processes?
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, AI is majority of the conversation today. So it's how do we embrace it? So we talked about the tools, what are the different ways that we can actually include in the process? I'm going to give you an example of, asking why. So we are in the process of understanding how do we guide the user, how much education do we actually need to promote for designing for AI? So conversational design is a huge trend right now, and no one has solved it correctly. So that is something that's very it's top of mind right now, is understanding, there's ethical, there as well as, how much guidance and education do we need to provide people in those experiences. The one model is look at Google. You go to the Google homepage and there's nothing. Do you really care how a search works? Is that a way to actually approach AI? Or do we need to take a more traditional wizard approach that actually you actually give prompts to make it easier and guide a user through that type of scenario to get an ideal result? It's very fascinating right now. It's in real time, thinking about different ways that we can actually surface this new paradigm of conversational design. It's not chat. It's not. It has way more capabilities to actually help us and use it as a tool. So that is one of the major trends I see. And I hit on a couple other around the ethical, as well as different other things that go into the knowledge base, how quality, where's the data, what is the prompting language? I mean, those are just all wrapped up in that one topic. But that is where we're at today.
Thank you. So I have one more question for Rusmir, and I'm hoping the rest of the time we can spend answering questions from the audience. So Rusmir, this is related to the community and to the people that are in this room. So what would be the most effective ways for aspiring local designers and product managers to learn and gain relevant experience in this domain?
Good question. I mean, I will not make a self-promotion of our community, what we're doing, but Peter, when he explained what makes a good product designer, he mentioned a couple of things, basically reading, educating yourself, and you should not be I will not say you need to be a full stack, but you need to understand every part of our business or every part of design or every kind of guideline principle that will help you to finish the work, basically. But through our community, we have seen that a lot of people like to attend the meetups. They're searching for the boot camps. The biggest issue what they have is they're really shy. They will not ask you the questions. Can you help me? Can you just make a review of my design? What you think? Can you give me the feedback or the critic? And this is something that we often see every day in our meetups. And just reading, I mean, I'm also the senior designer. I read as Peter has his own list at morning, drinking coffee and just read about all the trends and everything. And you can find a lot of boot camps either locally, or you can sign up to the ATP list. You can go to the Career Foundry if you want to switch from designer to the product designer or product manager or product owner. It doesn't matter. It's just learning. Just be willing to spend after 5 or 70 p.m. To spend 1 hour or 2 hours just on building your career and just reading, asking, and don't be shy. Just to ask your colleague about the feedback or something, what you don't know. I mean, my life was always, if I don't know something, I just go and learn, or either I paid people to finish my job. And often in my case, I paid really a lot with the money. And that's something that brought that kind of what we say in Bosnia inat, that just to find the resources and learn and at the end make it self. But if you make mistakes, then you know that you haven't made mistakes. But I always have asked the questions, and we always suggest to the people, just ask the question. That's why we have started last year to build the syndicate community, 5 guys, 5 old seniors, just to bring our knowledge, gathering young people, making reviews with them, preparing them for the future roles, either higher meetings or whatever, just to help them interest in it. But they need to ask. They need to ask, not just read. They need to ask their colleague and their surroundings about everything. And if I give you the critique, then that critique comes from probably 25 years of experience. And I will not say you need to accept it, but you need to listen why, because those are the 5 questions or 5 W's: why, where, because of. So that will be my suggestion, definitely.
Do curriculums in universities and in our schooling system provide the basis for this line of work? And is there something that we can do to improve those the curriculums throughout the universities? And also, can you share with us any upcoming events that you will have with your the syndicate group to strengthen these skill sets in the local area?
That's a good question. I mean, we have tried through the syndicate. We have started like with a promise. We'll gather our community every month and share our knowledge. We will bring people who will talk about customer experience, business design, service design. We had 2 events about the customer experience. It was really, really interesting for them. And that's something what we have taught, we as a group, just to go to the schools, faculties, whatever, just to try. For example, we had an event in collaboration with the Academy of Fine Arts where we had the last year of product designs. We just made a collaboration last year. They built some kind of tables as a product design, industry product design. And we thought maybe we can make an event with them or some kind of collaboration and just give them intro in the product design. So we gave them a task, 2 different applications. They were split in a group of 7 people. And it was really, really interesting how they defend the whole kind of discovery phase, the reiterating design, user feedbacks, the whole kind of bench of packet that we do every day. And imagine they don't have a knowledge. They never did it. They just had an introduction presentation by my side, and they just get a bunch of links. They have a read through and apply that. So this is something that we try as a community to go into schools and just give the people insights what they can do if they're working, if they're good or with the creativity, maybe they can switch that. So that's something. And with the syndicate, I think the next event is in September. We will try to get 1 guy who worked for Netflix, created games for Batman, Asylum, and much, much more. It's basically my school friend. And he was always good in 2 things, playing violin. And the second things, we gave our lunch money for them to him, basically to draw all kind of fine of arts things. So we get the great grades in the school. So we always try to bring other people. For example, Xander Whitehurst, we have tried to bring them here. He's asking a lot of money, so we need to gather and try to bring the sponsorship. So those are the things, basically bringing the high value people who can talk about their boot camps, about their way of teaching people, and just defending what we're doing. So that's basically the main goal, what we're trying to do.
Thank you very much. With this, I would like to open the floor for you guys to ask the questions and tap into this experience that we have here in front of us.
First of all, thank you to all the panelists. I'm a product designer here at HTech, and I actually have a question related to like how do you see the future of UX in, let's say, 10 years? And if you were to give advice on that topic, what are some of the areas that you would suggest people focus on, like some specific UX areas or perhaps UI?
Can I take the answer to this one?
Sure.
So my company is called Integral Redesigning Humanity. Now, originally, Redesigning Humanity was meant to be just like a mission statement, but I put it in the actual name of the company to remind me what we're here for. And one of the big jobs that I do as part of everyday life as a professional is designing designers. And that question comes up all the time. Effectively, the question of who are you? Okay, in this process. As AI becomes more and more capable and automates or even outdoes us in what we are really good at so far, and we thought we weren't kind of displaceable in, and then the question of who are you becomes more and more pertinent, okay? And one of the reasons why my company is called Integral is part of integral theory, which is one of the meta theories of everything, which at the core of it is about self-actualization and understanding what role you are playing. So one of the possible futures is the future called Centaur, where humans and AI work together, which is kind of already happening, although it's not really integrated at all. And really AI is very in an immature phase. It's a kind of like newborn baby that's hallucinating, something like that.
Clown language.
It's not clear whether babies hallucinate after they're born, but this one is hallucinating. So then being one with that newborn hallucinating baby is not something that I personally want. There's all sorts of transhumanist agendas at play, where, you know, chips in the brain, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's the X thing is like, what's that about? There's one company to rule them all, potentially, all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of kind of strange, weird, potentially scary things. And that's why we are at the heart of all of this, to design and redesign humanity to be that which we all want to be, not what someone else wants us to be.
I'll add to that answer for 3 years from now. That's a long time in what we do. But as it's the critical piece of technology and design are going to blend very quickly. So you're going to be asked as a modern, future forward product designer, you're going to be asked more of thinking about how to more business questions, understanding the architecture of prompts. How do we get to the, designing those? It's just going to be another extension. It goes back to, I've been doing this for a long time. So you see these technical kind of spikes of innovation, of capabilities. When I started, the expectation was design and code. It's going to go back to that, is really the expectation that you have to understand what is the logic. You might do hands-on, or you just have to have the basic understanding to actually understand how the data is being structured, so you can actually develop an experience to actually get the right answers from that data set. So that is going to be critical to explore and understand what are those patterns. What are those? I call it tuning. Looking at the data sets of whatever knowledge base is going to be created that the Gen AI is going to be generating on. You just have to understand that construct to be able to inform the end, going back to the need of the user, going forth.
Thank you for your answers.
Just while the next question is coming up, there's one very important aspect to this. It's also a question, what are we going to be designing in future? And chances are you're going to be designing living organisms and experiences of those living organisms. Okay, so the code is potentially recoding the genome of something, okay, et cetera, with the AI handling all the processing of data and insights and blah, 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 and so on. And the question is then, what is your role in that? And it's some sort of like curator of experience of what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, and all these kind of things. And you got to become a lot more familiar with ethics and actual real futurism, not the Terminator future, which is, you know, apocalyptic and all that stuff, but actual real futurism.
Can I jump in a little bit on this? Yeah, sure. Let me just continue on this and say that I'm a bit skeptical on this topic completely. So I'm going to be the opposite of what you've been telling me here. I double dare. So I feel like there's a lot of fuss about AI, and definitely is the future, but it's going to take us a while to get to where we want to be. And I feel like we're in the next 3 to 4 years, as Peter said, I feel like there's still going to be that human aspect and user behavior that is going to be centric for any kind of designer. We're not going to step away from building products and understanding customer feedback. AI is not going to do that overnight, you know, like we're going to get to that place in time, but by the time we get there, we need to focus more on the user needs. The environment is changing around us, but we're all building software products. We're not, I mean, here overall, I think most of the people are building software products. So essentially, the customer's needs, the user's needs, the behavior of a user, why would they click on this button instead of this button? What brings more conversion? What brings more engagement? How will we keep users in the app itself or doing things in there? Those are the things that I feel like I've seen so far are lacking in some of the product designers that I work with. People don't understand that, and that's like a more UX than UI. UI might be the thing that AI helps us more with, but the user experience and this kind of aspect of human behavior is something that is essentially, you're not going to get there until you talk to people, the real people. Try to find your personas, your actual users, and figure out what is the thinking behind it. Just before Smart continues, we worked on a venture actually launched in the US, which is a stress management app combining a CBT solution, which is like a cognitive behavior, meaning thinking and changing your behavior, combining with probiotics. And like that was kind of a revelation for me, understanding what triggers people's stress responses. And imagine building an app which deals with that. And there are so many different stress triggers which can participate in that. So those are the things that can basically help, can align us, can improve these kind of skill sets.
Sorry for taking your mic away, buddy. No, it's actually a continuation of future of the UX and design in general, right? I think we have a bigger question to solve before transform some of these things which you mentioned. I appreciate visionary point of view, but how would you tackle specifically, Mirza, maybe for you and Rusmir question, how would you tackle seniority design, meaning that right now Japanese are on average 45 years old or so, right? And we're gonna have super seniors, 65 plus and 85 plus, just 10 years down the line, people who are gonna struggle to use the phones and eventually understand what design is all about. How are we gonna solve this issue first without transformers and all of these things? Just your point of view.
This is all part of redesigning humanity. You got to bake into that vision. Like you got to start global first and all inclusive first. One of the biggest issues with the humanity today is that the wisdom of senior people, and I hate to be in a senior position here, I'm 42, I feel 23, yeah. The wisdom of the senior people isn't very well integrated into the capabilities of the younger people who are actually 23 physically. And also, like, children are not being listened to. So one of my biggest teachers is my daughter Layla, who is 11, right? I'd say to her, Layla, go to bed. And she'd say, Daddy, you're not the boss of me. And I was like, you're right. Yeah. So there's lots of stuff that we're missing out on because we're scrolling through junk. And part of that is because us UX designers designed junk experiences in the past that are super addictive, but they're terrible for us. And that's also part of redesigning humanity, of going, what are the experiences that we actually, so when he's talking about needs, is not really, most humans, all your needs are catered for. You're living here right now. None of you need anything. It's what you want. That's the key question. And this is where I'm evolving integrative design based on integral theory, where it's actually our wants and aspirations and the drive towards self-actualization that's the real driver of modern day design. We don't have any more needs. That's why people lost meaning in everything. Everything's meaningless. The true meaning comes from the next order of magnitude of thinking.
No, I'm not faced with anything like that. It's just my own because my biggest source for design is actually Norman Nielsen Group, NNG, and I just love these two old folks kind of understanding where are we at and where are we going to. So it's just going to be awesome to realize how our parents might be starting to use some of the elements of the new things, like, for example, ChatGPT in the future, right? So I'm just wondering how this...
it is a challenge, right? So, with the trend that I was referencing is that we need to provide the right empathy for that audience. And that's an international issue. There is demographics. My mother is, she doesn't know how to use her phone. She has a smart house. She doesn't even know how to use that. But there is the services, healthcare vertical in particular, there is advances of trying to design the right experiences to meet them where they're at versus just giving them technology that they can't use. So it goes back to identifying the needs of the user. And that is, I think that is going to be, and that is happening right now to really simplify technology. The generative, in my opinion, has the opportunity to really help out in that regard for the aging population. And I hope we answer. I'm excited to see where we go, because it is going to be, the population right now is going to be a large segment of the world. Oh, it's right now there's advances in healthcare around this area of really just imagine healthcare has changed since the pandemic. In the States, we don't need to go to doctors anymore. You can go to the local pharmacy and get all your checks and balances. You can do an evaluation on your phone and get a medication. So that is here today. But for the aging population, that's too far. They don't even understand email. Right. So they want to go to see a doctor because they love that human relationship. So there is services being developed. In-home care is huge, as well as people, finding the communities when they get to that particular age or moving in with family members. And, how does that work with getting support, in the home, or just being as I have my mother that I take care of, so I'm very familiar with the services right now, and I'm looking for the tools that are up and coming to be able to have the peace of mind that she's taken care of. And I use all the technologies I can to actually have the presence, but it's getting better, but this so disjointed, and the integration needs to happen currently.
I did a couple of studies, and the only outcome was when I can have my Amazon or a Starbucks voucher. That was the only outcome. They don't give a shit, right? Just ask questions. You're going to want to participate, engage them. The final outcome was, hey, just give me my Amazon voucher.
Well, yeah, we need, one central health. I would love to have all health information in one spot. So I could deal with just the communications and having line of sight to kind of facilitate those types of conversations.
And I also have a 79-year-old mother who, when she does her banking, what she needs, or she expresses her need as, is to go to a local bank branch to do her banking with. But I've worked with clients like HSBC, where the driver was to move 80%, 90% of the clients to mobile app and close down all the branches. Why? Because it costs an arm and a leg to run that. So my mom needs a local bank branch, but she's not going to get that. So the true needs that we have do not necessarily they're not an app, right? Which is a big part of design, is designing the right thing and then designing the thing right. Okay. And a lot of us have baked in assumptions, as in, what kind of an app does my mom need? She might not need an app. Huh? That's not the right thing.
Can I just align to your story about the bank accounts and mom? My parents, yeah. I mean, that there's a two stories. So 12 years ago, my parents emigrated to the United States, and because my sister lives there. So the first year of before they went to the United States, there was a year of preparation, how to use Skype, PC, and those things. And it was really cool. I wrote everything down on paper. My mom learned it and always asked how to connect and how it's got. With the time, she got familiar with that, and it was a really good connection. Skype every Sunday, talking. The relation to the story with the bank account. She also had a bank account. She doesn't like to go to the branches and move the money, but I think she used that app or abused that app almost every week when the paycheck came, and just transferred from saving to checking and checking to saving and that kind of stuff. She was really, really good familiar with that, with the application. And 2 years ago, they came to the Sarajevo, and of course, they need the bank account and everything. So what is the good bank? Only credit bank. They have online banking or whatever. So I made an account and installed the application, whatever, and she just looked at it, closed it. The next step is going to the branches, because she was not familiar with the application, and she didn't have the time to be to learn it and to build the habits. And this is basically the habits with the old people. They have habits. They don't want to change. They just want, I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, clothes, coffee, newspaper, but really newspaper, not online shit. So those are the habits. And we as a young generation basically needs to introduce the old things. So my things, I have a 9-year son. He is really good familiar with the digital kind of stuff. So he has also, for example, when he makes a bullshit, I take the tablets and the phone, whatever. He basically needs, or he acts as a junkie and needs basically 2 days to go off and to solve the problems in their head and go away off the tablets and start to play with the normal play tools. So those are the habits. Every time I'm a TikTok addict, and I spend probably 3 to 4 hours a day at the evenings, just scrolling. And this is my habits. This is something that I have tried to build, not aware of that, but unaware. So those are the things basically that we need to transfer to the old people.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so one of the
That's
the
cool.
core things, I worked at so many different banks, and one of the things I've vouched for is for every online bank to have exactly the same experience, because they all do the same thing. Yeah. And precisely for what he outlined just now, because I don't want to train myself in using one banking app account, scrolling through my statement, okay, and then train myself for another one. Like, there's so much cognitive overload that presents, and nowadays most of you probably have 7, 8 different banks that you bank with, and they all have different experiences providing exactly the same product. Okay, why? There's no need for innovation there. One of the places where we've been leaders and pioneers in innovation is digital government in UK. It used to be called direct.gov. That's where I started my experience as a UX designer. Now it's called Gov UK. It's the leader of digital government. And one of the big principles there is inclusion, accessibility, and giving every citizen access rights to that. And you cannot discriminate when you're working with the government, because the government is setting the standards for anti-discrimination. So that forces you to actually design in a way to say, actually, most things people don't need. And the more we reduce it down to absolute simplification, the better the actual experience is.
Yeah, thank you. I think your statement is perfect of what I wanted to ask. Do you feel sometimes that you are sacrificing product design for accessibility?
Accessibility, great accessibility is part of excellent product design. If your product is not greatly accessible, it's shit.
Thank you. I agree completely with you. Yes.
Me again. Actually, I have to chime in once more. Actually, I have a question related to what are some of the obstacles that you may have encountered while building modern day experiences for older people? Like, and how do you deal with that? And also another question is, are we headed in the right way with accessibility and everything? You know, do we really think so much about those users that may, use our apps? I feel like accessibility is oftentimes forgotten in designs, or we don't have time for that, or, stuff like that.
Empathy. You got to think empathy. It goes back to that. You just need, as a designer, you need to think about those characteristics. So if it's not part of the requirements of, considering those, that's just part of a design. You have to account for those different user types that are going to be using the product. So it's just a given in these days that you have to take those precautions, understand, is it intuitive? Is it accessible? It's just part of design today.
So accessibility is something that's actually really well documented nowadays. And I don't see many designers being taught accessibility, like overtly. Yeah. And that's a big issue because when I started my design career, this wasn't as well documented. So we had to go through the empathy process to find out what's a better, like, accessible approach to something. Nowadays, you can just read it and apply. So one of my friends, Ben Bashford, we used to call, like, for example, when we're doing buttons, we just used to call them big prodable areas, right? Because sometimes designers make like small buttons and then you have to sort of click into specific area. No, just big chunky prodable areas, sometimes you like wear gloves when using an app, simulate some sort of like dementia or issues with what's it called, arthritis and so on, if you're designing apps. But generally, like the user is not, there's also like drunk user testing, for example, so user is usually in very, very tricky places where they're using things. And those tricky places can be mentally tricky, right? Suffering from depression, suffering from pressure, stress, anxiety, all sorts of things. That's big part of accessibility.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amila. We do have a question online. I can read it out. And if anybody else has questions online, please feel free to add it into the chat. The question is, how do you handle situations where time, technical, or even budget limitations affect the design process if we consider the complete process and the steps that Peter mentioned in one of the slides? Any one of you want to tackle this in particular?
I'm happy to go. Basically, what I was going to say, with all due respect to Peter and his presentation, almost in every single design project where I work, I never follow those processes. Reason being, because of time constraints, somebody basically expecting something right now. And one of the actual things I have to do as part of my approach to actually win some friends and influence people is deliver to them as quick as possible something for them to start getting like engaged with. Okay, there's not even time for ideation workshops and this and that. It's just like, show me some fucking stuff. Okay, and then it's like, okay, here's some stuff, and then they start engaging. Okay, and where is that in the design process? It's breaking the process. Okay, But actually what it's doing is engaging the stakeholders and making them aware that they don't know what they want. They don't know what they need. They don't know what they're doing. They start respecting you as a designer. So I start asking them heavy questions. How would you do this? What do you think is the right thing? And they start realizing they don't know. Now that they don't know, I'm like, guess what? I have an idea. And then I start presenting them Peter's stuff, right? But it's the right timing to land those best practices. And usually I actually trickle feed them like with a pipette, okay? Every day you're gonna get a little dose of the bitter design stuff, okay? Because the wise people, they don't work with sweets, they work with bitters, okay?
Think
This is a very interesting aspect. I look at it from a sort of a different perspective. It depends how much money you want to waste and how much money you want to spend. If you want to spend shit ton of money on something that you're not sure if it's going to work or not, then feel free to do whatever you want. Sometimes it makes more sense to invest in ideation and validation in initial phases, or doing like a prototype with some sort of a group of users to save money down the line. It depends, again, what kind of product you're building, how fast it needs to go to market, what are you challenging something. Maybe you want to spin it off in a weekend and launch it and just get some users, or build a landing page to see if there's interest or something like that. Again, it depends on what you're actually building. That also plays into this whole triangle, I would say, like time, budget, money, and what else? Quality, of course. We always remember, how things start, with a perfect. I think it was like an online meme with I think a horse or something like that. Like it starts perfectly, like really a really high quality one, and then the way the weeks progress, it turns out to be just like a plain simple dumbed down version of what it actually was supposed to be. Trying to do, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, so there's different playbooks that Momentum, talks to clients. So it's obviously this is the ideal state. So there's different cadences, different time zones for different types of work. It really goes down to the problem at hand. So to answer that question there's that photo, the horse, yes. So yeah, I mean that goes also with customer, expectations. Sometimes they want the ideal, and they obviously have the budget for the stick drawing. But it's yes, what I talked about today was the ideal state. It's a way to actually get to the right answers, having the opportunity to iterate. But yeah, in true business form, you have to adapt and be flexible.
Thank you, Peter, so much. I'm sorry, Jason.
Just one point. So this is very relevant. I start with that drawing and I say that's what you can get in 2 days. For me, who is one of the best in the world, that's not what you want. So let's do it properly.
Thank you. I think there's a lot more discussion to be had here, and thankfully we do have some drinks and food organized afterwards, and hopefully our panelists will stick around with the audience to continue these exciting discussions. So join me once again in thanking Amila for preparing this great panel discussion, and our panelists Peter, Jason, Nermin, and Rosmir for joining us today. Thank you to everybody who joined us online and stuck with us, and for the questions and the feedback online and sharing the great picture of the horse. As I mentioned in the beginning, we do have a small surprise at the end. You all put your names in this. In this. Let me just move here, I think is better. So we have some great prizes today that have been provided to us by our, I believe, 10+ year partner in organizing digital events and supporting us with great equipment, Disti, here from Sarajevo. And we'll be sharing these prizes with you now. So I'll pick randomly names from this. How do you say pechar in English? Jesus Christ. Trophy. Okay. So third place, which is a fantastic Dell backpack, goes to Daniela Nestorovic. Leila will hand you the prize. Congratulations, that's all. Okay. Our second prize is a fantastic Dell wireless keyboard and mouse. And this prize is going to Haris Hasagic. Okay. And the first prize is a really, really good Dell monitor. Not bad. And this is going to Lamia. Lamia. Is there only one Lamia? Yes. You. Okay. So thanks once again for joining us. I think we heard a lot of great things about product-led development. Thank you, Peter, for the general overview. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your experiences on how product and engineering work together, or how to organize teams, what are some of the main considerations, and a great discussions on what the future holds for the role of product designers. Please send us feedback on this event, on topics you'd like to hear more of. And Rosmir, thank you so much for sharing the great work that you and the team are doing in building the local community. And we really hope to partner with you on a number of these things in the future. So please, for those of you here in Sarajevo, join us for food and drinks. And everybody online, thank you for sticking around.